Welcome to the True North Compliance Podcast, where we discuss regulatory and compliance issues for Canadian business.
Hello, I'm Sean O'Hara, and thanks for listening.
Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Antonia Medeiros. Antonia is an executive life coach, a speaker, an author, and a facilitator. For the past 6 years, Antonia has been focused on supporting individuals and organizations with living happier and more fulfilling lives and exploring with them what it means to be a leader. She's developed a unique expertise in women's empowerment and gender alliance, supporting men, women, and the companies who hire them to shift the way we think about women and partnering. Antonia is passionate about her work and was voted one of the top life coaches in Victoria in 2022 by Influence Digest and one of the top empowerment coaches in 2023 by the Coach Foundation. Antonia is also a board member for Lomba Canada, a charity supporting students to access education in Kenya, and for whom she walked 265 kilometers last November to raise money and awareness. Wow, it's been a year. For them, she's currently spearheading a project to help girls access high school as equally as boys, specifically by providing period products and access to contraception. She's also writing a book on guiding women through the transformations of midlife and why this is, for men and for women, the true revolution we've been waiting for. When she's not working and advocating, she runs, travels, reads, all with good friends, while trying to survive with humor, parenting hormonal teenagers. Welcome, Antonia. That seems like a lot. Yeah. So can you start by telling us how you got into this? What made you start?
It was an interesting evolution for me. I worked, I like to say that my career was really around building stories and writing stories. I worked as a journalist. I worked in communications and PR, and a lot of my craft was around writing and capturing stories. I was always very good with people. People seemed to be comfortable telling me stories from a very young age. So all that combined with time, and as I evolved, I became a mother also. I wrote a book while I was on maternity leave. So again, a lot of storytelling and story capturing. And I think coaching became a very natural evolution because that was a space in which I could help people build their life stories. I could build the next chapter of their lives with them and what that looked like. And that journey we're all in as human beings, how sometimes we need people to come in on that journey and help them get to the next step, especially when we're stalling. So coaching had all of those pieces together. It was about stories, it was about people, it was about connection, and it was about empowering others, which is, I think, everything I've always done in different ways through my career.
It kind of amalgamated
Yes,
then what you had done.
exactly.
Neat. Well, because this podcast deals a lot with regulation and compliance, either government regulation or voluntary, and then being a certified coach too. I'm curious what level of regulation, is there any government bodies that regulate life coaches, or are there any certain standards that you adhere to or that you voluntarily adhere to that you could tell us about?
Exactly. So coaching is a very interesting profession. It's very trendy these days. I mean, in the past 20 years, we've seen an extraordinary surge of coaches everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere. Everybody's a coach. And that has pros and cons. I think that the positive thing is that there's more and more people that want to help other people. And I think that's a very healthy thing. And I think there's enough people for everybody to pitch in, whether you're a coach, whether you're a therapist, and that there's all sorts of new professions that we're seeing in the field of helping others. So that's very positive. When it comes to coaching, a lot of coaches out there are not always certified. I think a lot of people call themselves coaches, but don't necessarily have the training. Organization that regulates everything to do with coaches, whether you're a business coach, a life coach, whatever kind of coach you are, is the International Coaching Federation. They're really the ones that set the regulations. They're also the ones that validate the trainings that coaches go through to become coaches. So they are a very important entity for us coaches. And the ICF has established a code of ethics that as professional coaches we have to adhere to. And there's a series of rules and regulations, ethics we have to follow to make sure that we do our job well, that we respect confidentiality. Now, it is up to us to follow them or not. I mean, for sure, the ICF is not always behind us, but I think that if we want to be professionals and we want to be recognized as professionals, I think it's essential for us to follow that code of ethics. That code of ethics is available on their website. And the ICF also provides 3 levels of certification based on your seniority, the amount of hours that you've done coaching, and they also check you on a regular basis to make sure that you're up to date with your practices and how you connect with your clients. That's really the body that regulates us all. But I can tell you that there are many coaches, again, who call themselves coaches who don't necessarily have an ICF recognized training and who just don't always do the things the way they're supposed to be done. And that's unfortunate. I think it gives sometimes a bad rep to coaches when I think coaches have an extraordinary and very important job. They're able to take people very quickly and deeply to where they need to go. And I think that's why also a lot of people see the appeal to coaching sometimes versus therapy, where we operate at different times and cover different needs. But I think that there's a lot of, I like to tell people, every successful people out there, whether in sports, in politics, in business, everybody has worked with a coach at one point or the other. And there's a reason for that.
They're successful.
Absolutely.
I was surprised many years ago to learn Madonna had a voice coach. And I thought, why would she need a voice coach? But
because we all need to improve and grow in our craft. And whether your craft is trying to be a happy human being, or whether your craft is being an international singer.
I have wondered then, what is the real, maybe the difference or the essence? Because in sports, we have athletes that go through, maybe they're Olympians or they've won the Stanley Cup 15 times, or they've done some huge accomplishment in their career as an athlete. Then they become coaches to get others up to that point or to exceed them. And is that like if I'm hiring a business? No, I won't say that. If somebody's hiring a coach, do they need to find somebody who's done what they want, done it better, and hired them? Or is there a different aspect that coaching brings?
I think there's a different aspect that coaching brings. And it can be a combination, because what you're talking about, there's also a mentoring part, right? Not all coaches are mentors. So you have indeed the coaches who have had the experience, and it depends on the field that they're working in, right? Like your example is a very good example. They end up coaching other people because also I think that there's something all about sharing with others, something that you have mastered yourself. But in the space of coaching, in the traditional sense of not sports coaching, but personal coaching, the coach disappears. The coach is there for the client. It's never about the coach and their experience and whatever they're going through. It's always about the client. Our job is to focus on the client and help them and guide them through questions, provocative, thought-provoking questions to really get them to where they want to go. So normally it's a situation that, yes, they want to improve. Business coaches, for example, have had a lot of experience in the world of business, and it depends, I think, on their specialty, and it depends what the clients are looking for. I really think that's essential to understand. Coaches are not people who are going to tell you what to do. That's not their job. A coach is there to listen and to get you where you need to go. So their job is really to ask you the right questions, to try to see where your the blockages that might happen, the mindsets that are not okay, or maybe habits that you have that are holding you back, and try to guide you to where you need to understand your limitations, basically. It's really not about telling other people what to do. In the world of sports, sometimes coaches do tell other people what to do because it's a little bit different. I think when it comes to personal development, the client always knows better who they are than the coach, right? The coach is really there just to guide and shift perspectives. So then it's never supposed to be about the coach. So it doesn't matter their experience. What matters is their ability to take the clients where they need to go and where they want to go.
We have then two very different practices, shall we say, but we give it the same name, which can cause that confusion.
Absolutely. And you know what's very interesting, and I'll give you an example of what you're talking about. So I have seen in my practice people who have been very successful, for example, and who maybe coach other people, people in sports or people in business who really reach the top of where they wanted to be, their financial goal, etc. And they get on top of the mountain, and then all of a sudden they're lost and confused. Everything they've dedicated their life to, they've achieved now. And then what's next? And that is usually when somebody like me will come in, somebody who can take them to the next chapter, redesign. When you've been doing the same thing for 40 years and focused your whole entire life on a goal, it's daunting when you reach that goal because you have to redefine yourself completely, right? It's a major life transition where everything you've been doing for 40 years, you don't need to do anymore because you've reached your goal. So what's next? The blank and redefinition of yourself after. This is where people like me come in that transformative process, for example.
That's fascinating. So, how do we achieve that transformation? Or maybe similar to that would be maybe that's for people at the top of their game and they are successful. What about people who've gone through those 40 years and they feel like failures, or they're just not there and they don't feel, I don't need a coach because I'm not at this height, but I'm just struggling to make it through every day.
This is the most common scenario, right? I see this all the time. People who get to a point indeed where they're deeply unsatisfied with their life. That's where my area of expertise is, because I think sometimes people live their life through a recipe of what they think success looks like. And that recipe is a combination of things. I have had many clients who realize in their 40s that they've been trying to live up to their parents' expectations, or what their parents told them success looked like, or what they grew up in their environment. And that's holding them back because in reality, it doesn't fit who they are. So they're trying to push a square in a hole, and it's like it comes a moment where it doesn't work. So my job is to come in and just really strip things down. And first of all, I think to help people understand that what they're feeling and experiencing is normal and it's healthy. We tend to think about these things as problematic. They're just messages, signs that you need to listen that whatever you're doing is not working for you anymore. Maybe it was working before. Maybe it gave you some form of satisfaction, but it's okay to say that now it doesn't work anymore. So how do I do this next, right? What do I need? What do I want? What does success look like for me? We see this in pivotal life transitions like getting divorced, getting laid off, becoming a parent, or midlife. We were talking about this is, it can be hormonal changes, it can be mindset change, what we commonly call sometimes a midlife crisis. Like, I hate that term because I think it's a positive. It is always a positive thing. So as coaches, what do we do? Well, we really create a space where people can just pause and think. How many times in our lives do we have the opportunity of thinking and taking the time to think? We always in our routine and catching up the next thing and running after time. But so I think that's the first thing, is that coaching is a space where people pause, they think, and they can brainstorm with somebody on fundamental questions about who they are and who they want to be. And then we set plans, action steps that are designed by the client. The client is the one who decides, this is where I want to go. Why is this where I want to go? All these questions we try to answer. And then what is one small thing that I'm going to do? For everyday people, sometimes it's small steps. And this whole idea that we need to do big radical changes straight away is a fallacy. It doesn't work like that. You need to do small things regularly, and that's going to create the momentum that you need to then believe that you can change. You can change your life. You can change who you are. You're in charge of your time and finding joy in small things.
What becomes the commitment? Somebody feels stuck, then what will it take? The commitment of time, what do they need to give up or put themselves through?
I think it depends on what's going on. So our job as coaches is to create sustainable change, right? We don't want quick fixes. because quick fixes are temporary fixes, right? Like fixes, like when you're a plumber, you don't fix a leak with a Band-Aid. You do the job properly so that you never have to see that leak again. It's the same thing in coaching. So for some people, it's quicker than others. I really love working at least 6 months with people because I find that that's usually a good time to navigate the high of the novelty of like, oh my God, I can do this, and the lows. And how do we, pick ourselves up and navigate the moments where we have less energy, less desire, where we start having all these thoughts about why this is stupid, or we revert back to old habits that are not good anymore. I think a minimum of 6 months is good. Meeting twice a week. Sorry, once or twice a month, just because you need to let things sit. With time, I think there's a lot of power in slowing down. I think we live so fast. Everything has to be quick. But I think that in those personal transformation, there's a lot of value in slowing down sometimes. Even if it's just that hour that you spend with your coach where you just pause everything, cut down all distractions, and just think about yourself. I always like to tell people, if I do my job well, my clients won't need me anymore. My job is about freeing people. It's not about creating a relationship where they're stuck with me forever. I want people to have tools to be independent and just to come back to me whenever they need it. That for me is my measure of success.
Not repeat business.
But I have clients who meet with me anyway, 30 minutes once a month, just because they like the check-in. They like me to just make sure, hey, how about this? What about this? What did you do about this? And because they need accountability. And then once in a while, something bigger happens. So, we take a few extra sessions. But no, yes, in terms of repeated business, it is indeed, not the best business in that people are not going to stay with me forever. But that's what gives me pleasure and joy and makes me think that I do my job well, is that when, again, that people are successful, autonomous, and they write to me and say, hey, that was fantastic, and I've done all of these things since, and it made a huge difference.
How does coaching differ from using a therapist?
Excellent question, because that's a very common question. So when we train as coaches for training, we are taught how to identify when whatever our clients is going through doesn't belong to the world of coaching, but belongs to the world of therapy. To simplify things, we often say that, therapy really is about traumatic experiences. It's about diving in the past, sometimes childhood. Now, on occasion in coaching, we do talk about the past, because especially if it's about repeated patterns and things like that. But that's where therapy comes in, right? Anything to do with trauma is in the field of therapy, is not in the field of coaching. So we as coaches need to be very clear on our boundaries. And this is why for me it's important to partner with therapists, because I like to know that I can send my clients to colleagues of mine who will address specific things so that we can continue working together. So that's very important right there. Now, what does happen sometimes is I have clients who have been in therapy for a long time and who are fed up with therapy, because they feel that they're not getting anywhere. They're getting stuck too much in the past and not feel like they're moving forward. This has happened many times where people come to me and say, I've done this, I want more action step. And I think that's why there's a lot of therapists today who use coaching tools in their practices, because it helps sometimes clients really get that momentum and action moving forward feeling. I think the other big difference is also a financial difference, is that often, not always, but your therapy is covered by your insurance, and coaching is not. Coaching remains a luxury for many because, again, your insurance doesn't pay for that. Now, there are ways around that I think it might be interesting to talk about. When you're a business owner, hiring a coach is part of expenses, right? You can count it under expenses or training. We're seeing also more and more companies who have inside their health insurance for their employees a budget of a certain amount of money that people can use for whatever they want, yoga classes or personal coaching or anything like that. So that's always also a way to have some of it covered. And I have seen also employees even though they were hiring me personally, going to the employer and saying, I am, hiring a coach to improve these things that will benefit me also as an employee. And I have seen sometimes organizations saying, sure, I will cover some of it because we have leaders out there who are keen on their employees working on themselves because it betters it just has an impact on everything, including, their happiness and sense of purpose at work. So there are ways around it. I think the most important thing to remember is, if people say, well, coaching is not cheap, I always like to tell people, well, how much is it really costing you not to invest in a coach and not to take care of those things that are holding you back? Your time is precious. It can all be over very quickly. And spending a whole lifetime dragging things that you don't have to, it's our duty as humans to be happy. Not all the time, but have the tools to navigate the highs and the lows so we can enjoy everything we have. So that's maybe another way to think about cost and coaching.
And if they're stuck or held back, they may view it as a cost, but it could give them maybe an advantage that gets them out of that and into a better situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, of course, I'm biased, but, it's money well invested. Any money that you invest in your own personal growth and development as a human being, as a business owner, is money well spent. For sure. And if with my clients, sometimes if it doesn't work out, if the relationship doesn't work out, if people are feeling that they're stalling and after trying, well, then it's okay to stop and say, this is not working.
What if people just don't know, or they think, gee, it is something in the past, or where do they start?
Usually, I'm pretty good at identifying that. I'm very good with patterns. That's something that I've developed, I don't know, in my job as, it's like a puzzle, right? It's all those pieces that you think are not together and don't make sense. The beauty of being outside of the box is that you can think outside of the box, right? And how really helps somebody see things. So you can suggest, you can say, oh, you ask questions in coaching sessions, and then people start thinking and putting things together. We use so many awesome tools. We can use paper. We can use sometimes just putting things on a piece of paper in front of someone. It's just, people say, oh my God, I never saw it like that. Oh, it all makes sense. Like it's all intertwined. And then it's easy to go from there to say, oh, maybe that's a traumatic experience, whatever, from your childhood. This is, here's the name of an amazing therapist who's going to help you with that. And then we can focus on these pieces, for example.
Let's touch on confidentiality or privacy, because a concern that, say, I would have dealing with somebody local, a therapist or a coach, and I get into the deep core, or somebody gets into the deep core of the issues, and they could be concerned, well, if I don't want word spread, it might damage my reputation. Is this person going to go somebody to my neighbors or whatever, if it's somebody in the community, and start to say, you got to stay away from him. He's crazy. He's got real problems. Or he's such a, insert your own self-limiting belief in there, and that just gets reinforced. So do I need to go looking in the other side of the world? Do I need to go looking in the other side of the world to find a coach?
No, that's a fundamental piece of the relationship that we have with our clients. It's confidentiality. We are bound by confidentiality. Anything that is talked about inside the space of the conversation, inside the session, remains between us. And that's fundamental because you need to be able to feel safe. And, if you don't create that sense of safety for people, that they can be comfortable to talk about whatever they need to talk about, then it's just terrible. People are never going to be able to open up. And, it's up to the client, because I have clients who don't like to talk about personal things, that our conversation are very business orientated and just operations and things like that. And for some of them, it's a combination of both. It's just so, confidentiality is so fundamental. And it even applies if I am hired by an organization, for example. This has happened, right? So company X hires me, deal with a manager or a director that, is having challenges, let's say, communicating with their staff or managing their time or whatever. This happens, right? So the leader will hire me, explain to me what things that they want me to work on, and then I will then work with that manager. And then, we have deep conversations, sometimes very personal conversations about things that might be affecting their job. We talk about whatever we talk about. I still cannot tell the leader the conversations that we're having about important stuff. That confidentiality is fundamental. And I am very clear with that, about that when I get hired. But what I can do with the leader, and usually I do it in agreement with the client, is we're measuring progress. And that's why one of the questions I always ask the leaders who hire me is, well, how are you going to measure progress? How are you going to see, what difference do you want to see in your employee, over time? And these are the conversation we can have, right? It's like, so what are you seeing? What are have you noticed how James now is, I don't know, handling his calendar better, being on time at his meeting? These things that are measures of progress, even if it's something like, have you noticed how he addresses his employees in a different way? Like, we don't have to divulge any of the confidentiality stuff. James might be going through a divorce and, I don't know, have low self-esteem and imposter syndrome. I don't have to talk about any of that, because when somebody hires me, somebody's not going to hire me because John has low self-esteem, right? They're going to hire me because as an employer, they want to see progress with whatever responsibilities and duties that they have. So it's easy to navigate. And it's very important for me to preserve that confidentiality while respecting the leader's demands. And sometimes those demands are unreasonable. Then I have to have this uncomfortable conversation of saying, how are you supporting your employee here in this matter? It can't just be one-sided. Then that's a whole other thing. But when it comes to confidentiality, it's a fundamental piece of the puzzle.
Is that part of the ethics of the
Absolutely.
ICF?
Yes. And the ICF has, templates of confidentiality agreements available to coaches, because it's so important. And
that's
also, yeah, go ahead.
And that's also why it would be good to have a coach who is certified.
Absolutely. Either certified through the ICF or certified through an organization that is recognized by the ICF. You can have both. But yes, you need to, and experience. Experience says everything. And, I have no problem, sharing some of my clients' references when I get hired by a company, for example. If they want to talk to some of my clients about their experience working with me, it's and, just going back to your questions about confidentiality, the example you gave, like me going to a neighbor and saying, hey, you shouldn't talk to whatever. I mean, it's detrimental to the client, but it's detrimental to me too. If can you imagine my reputation if I wasn't able to respect confidentiality? It's awful. Nobody would trust me, and that would be terrible. I would be devastated. No, so it's not. It doesn't serve anybody, really.
You have secrets you carry to the grave, kind of thing.
I do, and it's an honor to have those secrets. And I always tell people when I talk about what I do, often I have clients who come and see me because they think that everybody else has it together, right? It's like, oh, social media does not help with that, right? You look at, oh, everybody's so happy and everybody's got it all together, and look at me, my life is a mess and my relationship's a mess. I feel I don't like myself, whatever. And I always tell people, you have no idea what happens behind people's doors. No idea. Never assume anything, because I can tell you firsthand that it's messy everywhere. Nobody has it together. And it's very reassuring.
Yes, that is reassuring.
Okay, exactly.
As we reflect and as our listeners reflect on their own situations.
Exactly. There's room for improvement. It's all, yes. Don't think that everybody has it together. They don't.
They also are good at hiding things, or we're good at putting a twist on something so it seems like it's good, but they're hiding.
Absolutely. Appearances today have become so important, right? Again, social media is a perfect example of that. It's a infinite amount of people who all look like they have perfect lives, perfect houses, perfect relationships and bodies, and it's all appearance. It's all on the outside. And one might wonder, why do we need so badly to, do all this hard work to make sure that nobody sees that we're just struggling, or there's a lot of shame in going through a bit of a rough time. And that's very unfortunate, because
It's
if
the
we were,
validation. Yeah.
yeah. And I
It's
think
the validation of others.
absolutely, exactly, external validation. And I think that if we were able to connect with others sometimes and be a bit more vulnerable and a bit more like, oof, this is a bit messy, even if we do it with humor, I think we would have so many deeper connections with others. We would feel less lonely, right? And less time pretending and more time connecting with others about our experiences and our challenges.
As a fan of science fiction and a Star Trek fan,
Yes.
they occasionally deal with species who are empathic or telepathic. And if we were all like that, it would be a vastly different world.
Absolutely. Can you imagine? It would be very interesting. Yeah.
As we encounter people, then we would know, like, how if we wouldn't necessarily have to ask, it should certainly make dating faster.
Yes. Yeah. And stop dating people you shouldn't be dating faster, too.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, decades ago when smoking was a thing, there was a lighter that had a sticker on it, a cigarette lighter. It says, if it's no, tell me now before I spend $10 on drinks.
Okay.
Yeah. That kind of thing, if we could understand and interpret how each other is feeling.
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell people what happens in a session if they have a thought, gee, maybe Antonia can help me. What do I do now? And then what happens when they actually meet you and they go through? And like, do they sign anything? Do they sign a confidentiality agreement? Do they have to do something special, or how's it work?
So usually the process is, when somebody's interested in my services, they will book a free consultation. This is a 45-minute conversation during which we just discuss, we get to know each other, I explain a little bit about what I do, and it's the opportunity for me to try to identify, what does my client want? What are the challenges? What are the, what's been his experience with exploring those challenges? What has worked? What hasn't worked? It gives me very quickly a sense of personality. Can I work with this person? And for them also, can they work with me? Do they like me? Do they trust me? They can ask questions about what happens during a session. And then we establish together, what are the things we're going to be focusing on should we work together? Usually, after that, I send them a summary of that. So we're all clear on, if we work together, these are the things that we're going to be focusing on. And then once we are in business, there's contracts that usually there's a contract that has a confidentiality clause in it, and that summarize all the ins and outs of what my responsibilities are, what they can expect from me, and what I expect from them. It's usually really a lot about commitment, right? Commitment to do the work that they need to do to improve and to move forward, because I can't do that for them. I can help them, but they still need to do the work. And then usually a session is, so we have this like overarching idea of what we're going to do and work on. And then usually we ask the client, so what do you want from our session today? What do you need the most, or what would be most helpful? Sometimes they don't know what they want. Sometimes they arrive at a session and they don't really know. And that's also an opportunity to explore, because I always say all the roads lead to Rome. At the end of the session, we usually have narrowed it down very quickly to what the problem is, and then try to just create an action step. So sessions are a lot, it's a conversation. I ask questions, I challenge certain things, and, based on that, I follow the guidance of my client and try to just shift perspectives and, try to see where is it blocking. And then usually towards the end, the client commits to an action step, 1, 2, 3 action steps that they're going to do to move things forward, right? Things that they're going to change, or habits they're going to implement, and then every time we meet, we track and make sure that it's happening. And sometimes it's about them being able, instead of focusing on all the things that haven't worked, they can say, well, this worked well and this worked well. So there's a momentum that's being created. And then there's accountability also in between sessions. Sometimes with clients, they like me to text them. Sometimes some of them feel that, once a week, I'm going to email you everything that I've done that week. just for their own accountability. So it varies, and I'm always available in between sessions for them. If they have questions, if something's not working, if there are good things, not good things. So that's usually how, and when we measure and track progress all throughout. And sometimes we go back to the big, is that working for you, etc. Because sometimes people come in and they think they want to they want to work on something, but that's not really the problem. It's something else. And that starts showing up in the sessions. And it's okay to just gear things. Do you want to keep on exploring this, or do you think this would be more pertinent, So that's pretty much how it works. And sometimes it's brainstorming. Sometimes they come in and something has happened that sometimes has been unrelated to what we're working on. And they're like, this has happened and I feel I need to brainstorm on this. And that's always interesting too.
What about people who are people pleasers?
Yes.
And can they end up, I guess, not just people pleasing, but pleasing the coach? Like, is it giving the answers that they think you want to hear, not what they genuinely want to say? And how do you...
Well, usually I'm pretty good at spotting that, because a lot of people come to me because they have problems with saying no, people pleasing, and boundary issues. That's a classic. So many people, because my job is always to make it about them. It's not about me. It's about them. What do you want? What is good for you? And sometimes the work is about for them to learn how to do that. What do I want, really? So the coach has to be as invisible and neutral as possible, and has to always gear it back to the client. It's about them. I'm at their service.
I did deal with one once, and that was part of the issues, is she'd point up and ask and drill and drill and drill, and I would be resistant. And then eventually it was, okay, I'm paying the bill. I got to get on with my day. This is what you want to hear. So this is what I'm saying. And I didn't get anything out of it.
It's tough.
So, yeah.
It is tough. And people struggle with that sometimes their entire lives. It's really, really hard to be a people pleaser. Very hard. Because you have to relearn years of habits of putting everybody else before you. And not because people pleasers, they don't know anymore. And what they want and who they want sometimes. And that discrepancy between being able to ask for what they need, putting other people's needs first, it's very, very difficult. But solvable.
Yes, that's good to know. Are there any situations that you won't take on, like substance abuse, suicide, abusers?
Yes, these are the realm of therapy. Yeah, substance abuse is a very good one. Maybe people who in recovery and who don't struggle with that. But if it's a problem, I'm not a recovery coach, and there are people who are trained with experts in that. It's important, especially for big challenges such as that one, to go for an expert. And no, I don't do that. And then sometimes it has happened that I just not comfortable coaching someone. I've become good at identifying very quickly who I can work with and who I cannot work with. And I cannot work with people who don't want to change. Sometimes it has happened that people come to me and they don't realize that they're going to have to do the work. I'm not going to do it for them. I can hold their hand, but people are not ready to change, or they don't want to do the work to change. They don't really want to change. It's like this. So that it's hard for me to work with people like that.
Is it possible they don't know that they don't want to change and that comes up later?
It's never happened to me, but I know that I have colleagues that it has happened to. It doesn't, usually when people do the step and they call you and they commit and they invest, usually that's a good sign. But sometimes it happens. It's rare, but it happens. And it's so sad because you've done all this work and then you're like, the client is like, just, but usually very quickly we're able to identify that. That's why we need professionals that are trained properly and certified and have experience, so they can very quickly see, can I help this person? Can this person help themselves or not?
It's fascinating. But one last question then, Antonia.
Yes.
How can people get a hold of you?
Through my website, which is antoniamedeiros.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. Send me an email, which is also my website. It has a contact information there. That is the best place. You can find me on Google, I think, also. So I should be pretty easy to find.
And we'll also put you in the show notes.
Thank you.
That will help. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I enjoy our conversations so much. Always do. So thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you for being here. My guest today has been Antonia Medeiros. Thank you for being here today. And that's a wrap.